introduce myself. My name is Kevin Dupree. I'm a senior director here at FMT Consultants. I've been working with Dynamics GP now for quite some time. I don't want to say because it's been so long, but really excited about the session this afternoon here on modernizing your business with Dynamics GP. So what are we going to try and accomplish during this hour? We're actually going to review the Microsoft roadmap for Dynamics GP, where it's been and where it's going. And then I'll actually walk you through and show you how a company is using the features of Dynamics GP 2016 to manage and grow its business. So as you can see here, Microsoft's been investing heavily over the years in Dynamics GP, and this is a huge factor when considering adopting Dynamics GP as your enterprise resource planning business solution. If you've looked at some of the research from independent analysts like Forrester, Gartner, etc., you'll see that they say that an ERP solution's lifespan should be somewhere between 5 to 7 years. That investment, the investment that Microsoft is making in Dynamics GP is actually extending this life cycle well beyond what the analysts are predicting. I'll highlight just a few of the recent feature additions, and then we'll see GP in action. So first off, all I can say here is, wow, it's about time. Microsoft has actually finally realized that not everyone in the world wants to use Internet Explorer, or even its replacement Edge. The new GP web client leverages HTML5, which allows it to be both browser and operating system agnostic. So you Mac and Android people, get ready to access GP directly from your device and not through some sort of remote connection like we've had to use in the past. On Power BI, companies are considering Dynamics GP to provide access to information quickly and easily, and that's really where Power BI ups Microsoft's game. I'm not going to go into too much detail here on the integration of Microsoft Dynamics GP and the features of Power BI because most of you attended the 10 a.m. session that we did earlier today on how to leverage Power BI in your business. And if for some reason you missed out on that session, it'll be available on demand in the upcoming days from our website. GP 2016 now allows Power BI dashboards to be displayed directly on the GP homepage. So GP users don't have to launch another application to have the rich visualizations and other analytic capabilities at their fingertips. Power BI also allows users to dive deep to uncover business trends or to perform additional analysis just by clicking on a chart or a grid. Well, the GP Power BI integration gives GP users those same capabilities. By clicking on a Power BI object in the GP homepage, GP will automatically launch a Power BI session and set the context of that session to the data the user just selected, which provides a fantastic user experience and allows the user to continue to analyze business trends. GP Workflow, while not new, GP Workflow was actually first introduced in 2014 with the release of GP 2013 R2. Since then, Microsoft has continued to enable workflow capabilities throughout GP's feature set. Besides automating review and approval processes, the key thing to know is that these people, the individuals responsible for reviewing and approving, do not need to be Dynamics GP users. They can view the details from an email sent to them and select the approve or reject options without ever needing to log into Dynamics GP. While Microsoft continues to enable more workflow capabilities within GP with each new release, it also provides a tool set to allow you to create additional workflows or customize the messages sent by GP. You should check out FMT Consultants' blogs for more information about workflow, as well as other helpful information about the solutions that we support. And you can see the hyperlink here to the workflow email that vSwap, one of our GP developers, has done. So you can use that link once you get access to the slide deck to be able to quickly and easily navigate to that blog. So let me start off the transition to actually seeing GP in action by giving you a little bit of a scenario. If you're part of last year's Enverge conference, you may remember my keynote presentation on a fictitious company called Howley Hank's Luau Emporium. This was a company I conjured up about 30 days before the conference and really was used as an experiment of how Microsoft Social Engagement, which is a solution that Microsoft provides to monitor social media and interact with customers and other people online, how that solution could build brand awareness and drive business demand. So since Microsoft Social Engagement is a social media solution, awareness and demand was driven and measured by the total number of Twitter followers Howley Hank was able to collect. By the day of the keynote, Hank had started 30 days earlier with 0 followers and had over 250 followers the day of the event. And that included several real Hawaiian radio stations, hotels, and restaurants. So Hallie Hank's Luau Emporium, the mission was to bring the spirit of aloha to the mainland by providing private luau experiences and eventually selling select products. Unfortunately, and as satisfying as it was to see people and companies engaging with this fictional person / company, I needed to end the experiment after Enverge last year. I think it was partly because I started to talk about him as if he were real. So Hallie Hank met his demise about a week after our Enverge conference. Hank was sous vide in a hot tub accident on Halloween night. And for you non-foodies out there, sous vide is a method of cooking where the food is actually sealed in an airtight bag and placed in a temperature-controlled water bath. So that's enough. Let's kind of get into seeing the solution here. So while Hank can't join us, his company, Hallie Hank's Luau Emporium, is our case study for GP in action. Let's start our tour and see how his family is making his dream a reality using Dynamics GP. So first off, notice that I'm running Dynamics GP in Google Chrome and not Internet Explorer. And don't worry, Microsoft fanatics, you can still run an IE, so there's no need to worry about having to go to Google there. I'm running it in Chrome to actually reinforce what I shared with you earlier about GP being browser agnostic. I didn't want to push the envelope too much and conduct this entire session on a Mac because that would just send the fanatics over the edge. And pardon the pun about Microsoft's new browser. So the scenario here is Hallie Hank Luau Emporium is onboarding a new vendor, the House of Honu. Honu in Hawaiian is turtle. And they make turtle-shaped kalimbas, which Hallie Hank is selling through their e-commerce platform. So what we're going to do is actually set up a new vendor. And I have vendor maintenance right here on the quick links of my browser. And what we want to do is I have to provide the name of the vendor. Oops. Cap lock is on. I'm going to assign it to a vendor class just so that I can inherit the attributes of that class, and this is an actual inventory vendor, so we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to give it an address ID, but so you don't have to sit there and watch me type all the time, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. So because this is a new vendor, we actually need to make sure that we don't need to collect 1099 balances for this. And so what we need to do is we need to attach the W-9 form to make sure that that this is a corporation. We can go ahead and not subject them to 1099. So I'm going into Microsoft Dynamics GP's document attach feature. Coming in here, going to attach a file, and we have the House of Honu's W-9 form that we'll go ahead and add on into the vendor record. And then that is actually something that those documents can be viewed at any point in time as we're going along through the process here. They're stored in the database, and so regardless of whether you access this through the web browser or what device you're accessing it through, you don't really need to worry about that. Now, in Hallie Hank's company, since I'm setting up the vendor, I'm actually not allowed to approve that vendor because later on I'm going to be putting in payables transactions for that vendor. So rather than printing out the details of the vendor, attaching a printed copy of the W-9, walking it to the controller and have them to review and sign off, we'll use Dynamics GP's workflow. So if you see up on the top of the ribbon of the vendor maintenance form, there's a submit button, and that's because the workflow is enabled there. Please approve my new vendor. So I'm going to give some context of what I'm asking to be approved by the controller here, and submitting that off for review and approval. So Dynamics GP's workflow has actually kicked that off, and that email should be coming in momentarily into, there it is, into the controller's email inbox, whether that be Outlook Web Access like I'm running here, Outlook, the desktop app, or whatever that might be. And so with the approval here, the message that's been provided, as I said before, and check out that blog again for being able to review and customize the messages there, allow us to see what information has been provided. So the name of the vendor, the class has been assigned to, etc. And then I'm also able to see the attachment of the W-9 because that document attach feature in the workflow sends those documents automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this. We'll say this is approved for use, and we'll approve that message. Now, at no time did you see me actually log into Dynamics GP as this vendor, or as this reviewer and approver. So a lot of times, especially if you start thinking about workflow as it applies to other things, other processes within your organization, requisitioning, things like that, you might have like the CEO or some other people that are involved in that process, and we need to make sure that they're able to see the information, approve that information, or reject that information without having to know how to get into Dynamics GP. So if we call that vendor back up again, what we're going to be able to see here is up on the ribbon where we had that submit button before. We certainly can recall the process there. We don't want to, but the button next to it is the approval history. And so with all workflow, this is just one example of it, we can actually see the user, the date, time, that it was submitted for approval, and if there's a multi-step approval process, all of the people that are within the approval chain, when they received it, when they actually approved it. And what this means to you is that when your auditors roll in later on and they want to be able to audit some of your internal controls, you'll have that information at your fingertips, and you no longer need to actually retain paper with physical wedding signatures on there. You have all of this stuff electronically. And we've worked with most of the big four accounting firms and have taken them through the review of workflow and the electronic signature process, and they've all signed off on this for our clients as acceptable internal controls. All right, so now that our vendor's created, we're ready to place our first purchase order with the House of Honu. So rather than going through the navigation pages, like if you've used GP before and go to the purchasing series, etc., one of the other exciting features of the web client is the search capabilities within the system. So if I start typing purchase order, and we'll give a couple more letters, purchase order entry, we can see right here. So from that search button up top, I'm able to quickly find reports, inquiry windows, as well as transaction windows in the system to be able to go ahead and do what I need to do. So the quick links and also the area pages, they all still work, but also another time-saving feature that allows us to go ahead and find pieces of the application that we need to work in on a regular basis. So I've selected the new vendor, the House of Honu that we just put in, and they sell these kalimbas. Now when I type the item ID, because this is a brand new vendor, this inventory item, well, we have it already established in GP's inventory module, the assignment between this vendor and that item has not yet taken place. So the system is prompting me there, and I'm going to go ahead and make this association of associating this part number with this vendor. So this is synonymous with approved vendor lists. So we're going to buy in eaches, and let's buy 1,000 of those. And the $5 that we have here defaulted from the last purchase cost. Now that we have this vendor established, the next time that we use this vendor, the cost of their items will be defaulted in automatically. And I have one warehouse where I store everything. Oops. And so we'll go ahead and put that on in there. So what we have is the purchase order itself is now completed. But the challenge that we have here is that because Howley Hank's Luau Emporium is basically a very young company, they don't really have an established track record from a credit perspective. And so the House of Honu is actually asking for a prepayment for the amount of the order that they're placing. But before we process that prepayment, we know that they're going to have $50 worth of freight or shipping costs applied to that. So we'll go ahead and add that on in there. And then the prepayment that we need to process is for the full amount. Now, the feature of prepayment actually was released in a prior version of Dynamics GP, but in this version here, all of the additional fields of tax, miscellaneous charges, freights, etc., have been applied to that prepayment process. All right, and so we're going to go ahead and we're setting up the payment, what checkbook it's going to come out of, etc. And I'm going to go ahead and choose OK. And then what that's going to allow us to do is process that prepayment. That prepayment automatically gets sent over to the appropriate accounts payable section, and we're set to go. So the House of Honu, the vendor that we're working with, uses Microsoft Power BI with its predictive analytics, so they're already anticipating this order. And Howley Hank's warehouse is ready to receive it. So let's go through that process right now. And I'm just going to go up here to the action button on the tab. And instead of going through and just receiving the item, because of, for sake of time, I'm actually going to receive an invoice, all of the PO line items that we have here. And so from here, I'm launching the receiving transaction entry window. And we're actually seeing here's just the only line that we have on the PO. If there was multiple lines on the PO, we could go ahead and select which ones that we actually wanted to receive. And because this is also an invoice, I need to put an invoice number in. So I'm going to put in an invoice number, and the system will confirm that we've never seen that invoice number from this vendor in the past. But one of the things that you don't see is the application of any prepayment amount. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and put in that $50, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The application of the prepayment itself is down here, the $5,000, but we know that we have freight of $50 on the transaction. So that $50 now fully satisfies the prepayment amount. And for sake of the accountants in the room that might be taking a look at this, it actually is taking care of updating inventory, the freight account, and then also relieving an account where that deposit or those prepaids were made. So the system is taking care of all the accounting treatment behind the scenes there. So we're ready to go ahead and process this receipt. So I'm going to go ahead and post that on in now. And what that's done is actually place that invoice into accounts payable, but because it was fully satisfied, it's just there for inquiry purposes only. All right, so while we're in accounts payable, let's take a look at some other features of Dynamics GP. So I have an invoice here for FMT consultants, and this is for some consulting fees. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in a batch, and let me go ahead and do a lookup and grab the batch ID that I want to use, and we're going to use this Payables batch that I have out there. And the vendor that we're going to use, as I said, it's FMT. Their document number is something out there, and it's for $1,000. Eventually, we'll get to 1,000. There we go. All right. So what we have here, a lot of times when we're working with companies, helping them to modernize their business with Dynamics GP, the process that they have for putting payables vouchers in is an AP clerk goes ahead and puts in their vouchers for the day or for a certain period of time. And at the end of that period, they actually come in and they do something. They come in and they actually print their payables batch. So let's go ahead and pull up the payables batch entry window and grab that batch that we were looking at there. And they print this, what's called an edit list, and that still can be done. We can come up and choose print. We can go ahead and print that edit list out. But now what happens with Dynamics GP and the workflow enablement, if we go ahead and kick off this process here, approve my batch, what it will do, just like we saw with the vendor approval process, it'll actually send an email message to the appropriate person that's responsible for reviewing and approving batches. And that'll roll on in just like we see right here. But not only just the email message itself, but the entire edit list that we used to print out on paper and then walk down the hall with all the support is automatically sent to the person as well. So right from that email message, without ever logging into Dynamics GP, they can see all the relevant detail of everything that's in Dynamics GP in that payables batch. And then also any associated transactions and master files that have documents attached, those supporting documents will also be provided within the email itself. So right from here, the controller or whoever it might be can see everything, never have to log into GP, and choose to approve that batch of transactions. So a big time saver for the people that are doing the data entry. They don't need to print anything out and walk things down the halls for approvals, and the approvers themselves don't need to wade through massive amounts of paper and support because they have all of that at their fingertips. So that batch is approved, and then from there, now that user can go ahead and post that batch. And then from a workflow enablement standpoint, the system can also send back notification to the people that submitted the workflow that their transaction or their batch or their master record has been approved. So as I mentioned before, Hank's business is really new, and because of that, they're watching their cash flow carefully. So rather than paying some of their vendors via EFT or checks, traditional checks, they actually use a company credit card to pay some of their vendors. And while Dynamics GP always had the ability to process credit cards, it would do so on a transaction-by-transaction basis. And now what GP can do is actually go ahead and process payments through the normal batch process here. So if we put in nverge, I've been typing it all day, but apparently I can't type it now, and choose that we want to pay this batch of transactions via credit card. We're going to go ahead and choose a card that we have configured. So we're going to use the gold card that Hank has, and we're going to go and take a look at the transactions. And so what I want to do is I actually want to go ahead and select my payables checks. And what that's going to do is allow me to go ahead and build my batch of transactions here, automatically looking at everything that's due and ready to go. Or I can just simply come in and go ahead and look at the list of vendors that are out there that have open payables transactions. So if we click down maybe on associated insurance, we can see that there's 4 open transactions here. And we can go and select the appropriate ones that we want to pay. And if we have another vendor that we just wanted to pay in its entirety, we go ahead and click on that vendor right there. And what we're doing is actually building, the full payment of that batch. So not a lot, $333. But what we have here is when we process this, all of these vouchers would be paid, and then the associated payment will be charged against the card itself. So if it's a bank card, it will debit a general ledger account. If it's a card that's tied to a payables vendor, it'll go ahead and put a voucher in there in order to satisfy the payment made to those vendors on that gold card. All right, so we've actually looked at some of the procurement pieces. And what we want to do now is kind of transition over to the opposite side of things and actually look at the sales process there. So what we have is we want to go in and take a look at the sales order processing section of Dynamics GP. And what you'll see here is this is GP's order management system. And like most things in Dynamics GP, one form or one window, if you will, kind of thinking about it in old school terms, can actually perform multiple functions. So in this case here, we can see quotes, orders, fulfillment order, invoices, returns, etc. So we want to place an order, and we want to do so for these Kalimbas that we were just purchasing. I'm going to go ahead and choose a customer here. We'll just choose the first one in this list, Aaron Fitz Electrical. And we're going to go ahead and put it into a batch so that we can save this transaction off in case we get interrupted or something like that. And we were using these turtles before, and I'm going to go ahead and purchase 10 of them. Before we move off here, we're going to see that the system has actually put in $30, which is the unit price of these turtles that we're selling. If I come down and let's insert one more line, what you'll be able to see is while we're putting it in and the $30 a unit has come up, if we increase this beyond the pricing threshold, you'll see that the pricing dynamically adjusts. And so what this is showing the capabilities of Dynamics GP as it relates to tiered pricing. And so with the system, no longer do you have to have paper-based paper-based price sheets, and so on, the system can dynamically adjust and provide the pricing that that your customers need based upon their contractual agreements with you or something else. So let's go ahead and process this along. So as I said before, Hank's predictive analysis and everything else, the warehouse team already knew this order was coming, and they're super fast, so they've already actually picked, packed, and shipped the order off to this customer so that they can enjoy these turtle kalimbas here. And so what we want to do is want to transfer this order over to an invoice, to invoice the customer itself. So I'm choosing from the Actions button to transfer. If we required any deposits from the customer, which we didn't, we could transfer those balances on over here. And we'll go ahead and click Transfer. And then what that will do is change or transform the window into an actual invoice, showing us that now, instead of being an order, it's actually an invoice here. And the system itself is completely threaded from a transactional standpoint. So if we needed to see the history, if this came from a quote, then to an order, to an invoice, or if there are multiple shipments, we can see the entire transaction history right here. So this is all good. We know that this is what the customer ordered, what we shipped to them, and we're ready to go ahead and process this invoice. And so I'm once again going to the Actions button up on the toolbar on the ribbon and choosing to post this transaction. So what that does is it allows us to go ahead and process that invoice, and that invoice now is associated with Aaron Fitz Electrical, and it's going to go ahead and update their account record. Well, when I was talking earlier about Power BI is one of those data visualization tools that allow us to analyze what's going on within Dynamics GP. And as I said before, it's a rich and powerful tool, but it's not the only tool that's available. So if you're a Dynamics GP user, one of the nice features within Dynamics GP is what they call the all-in-one viewer. Now we'll look at all-in-one as it relates to our customers, but just know that the same capabilities that we're looking at here on the sales side of things is also available on the purchasing side, so you can analyze your vendors, etc. And then also within the inventory module, so you can see the ins and outs and everything else that's going on with inventory items. And so as I pull this on up, what we're going to see here is we're actually seeing the entire history of all transactions related to Aaron Fitz Electrical. And so we can see all of the quotes, all of the orders, all of the invoices, cash receipts, etc. You can kind of see the entire history of it right here. So if we click on this last order that we just processed, this order number 2238, we can see that that order was then invoiced on this invoice number. And just to make sure that we're keeping everybody in the loop here, we're not trying to pull any fast ones from a demonstration standpoint. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And there's that invoice there, and there's the 2 lines of invoicing that we had done, processing that invoice and sending that out electronically to Aaron Fitz Electric. So if we want to see some other information, let me go ahead and drop down to another order here. And because we didn't follow it all the way through the procure to pay process, I wanted to show you that in here, by selecting this order, not only do we see the invoice or invoices that go along, but also any associated payments that are with that. And then just the same thing, because of the threading transaction process of Dynamics GP and how all transactions are tied together, we're able to quickly and easily see that Dynamics GP is showing us the associated payment for that particular invoice there. So what we've seen so far is we've seen information that's on the purchasing side of things. We followed a purchase order all the way through the receiving process. We processed payment via credit card for that, and certainly those traditional forms of payment are still out there. And then on the sales side of things, we placed an order for the items that we purchased, shipped those to our customer, and then went into the all-in-one viewer to be able to view that information and see how we've transacted with that customer over time. I think maybe one last thing before we leave the sales series, because I didn't touch on it in the purchasing series, is also the email enablement capabilities. While you didn't see me print any documents or anything else, Microsoft Dynamics GP has full email enablement, both on the sales and purchasing series. You can see all of the different types of documents that come out of the system, in this case on the sales side of things. And a lot of times, especially with sales and purchasing, the sales orders themselves, we might need to be able to send a sales order acknowledgement to a customer, but send that to a specific email account or a specific person rather than just a generic account or the main contact at that customer. And so what we can do is actually enable email addresses based upon the document type. And what that allows us to then do is click on these ellipses and go ahead and add in who should be sent on to, CC, and blind copy for each one of the document types there. So you can really get specific as to where those the emails and the associated attachments need to go. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other capabilities of Dynamics GP as it relates to business analysis. And if there's a number of people that have been that are on this session here that have been using GP for quite some time. And one of the most powerful features that was introduced a long time ago is a concept or this feature called Smart List. So I'm just using the search form to go ahead and choose Smart List itself. And we're seeing here Smart List that's within the browser. And dropping down the sales series, since we were there before, we're seeing a number of predefined folders. These folders are sorted views provided automatically outside or out of the box by Microsoft. Taking a look at that, we can come in and search, also sort, filter, etc. Adjust the columns that are being displayed, either the order of which they're displayed or adding additional columns that are available out there. But one of the things that Microsoft introduced just a couple versions ago was this concept called the Smart List Designer. And what that allows us to do as users of Dynamics GP is to create additional smart lists. And so a lot of times we have clients that are saying, hey, I'd really like a smart list that contains the following information, but it's not there and available out of the box. And so no longer is that a limitation, or no longer is it a requirement to actually use third-party software in order to be able to go ahead and satisfy that request. And what we have is we have GP releasing, or Microsoft releasing, a long list of what's called views. And what they are is, if you think about it in terms of how data is stored within Dynamics GP, it's stored at a database level. And if you ever look at that, it tends to be a little cryptic. And so what Microsoft has done is created these views to translate those cryptic database names. You can kind of see some of them as we're scrolling along here, and instead turn them into simple English terms that all of us can understand. And so if we do something like we grab our customer name, maybe a phone number, and then some of the aging buckets there, I might want to call some of these customers to make sure that they're paying us on time, and then adding this in, and we'll call this the nVerge list, and choose OK. So what I've done is I've just selected a couple things. I click quickly and easily be able to see what those things look like. And then we're saving that smart list back to the Smart List Designer. All right. And so what we have here is, and I'm just going to drop this out and open it back up from a browser perspective. Oops, I don't want nVerge, I want Smart List. And drop down the sales series, and I can tell you it worked in the dry run, but apparently it just didn't work right there. Maybe I didn't save it there. So let me pop back on in again and add this on in. My apologies for that. So bear with me 2 seconds here. All right, so we're dropping this list back down. We're going to go into the sales series. There we go. And I had customers, so let me find my customers again, and then we'll go ahead and add those components back in. So we had name, phone number, and a few of the aging buckets, and I called this enverge. There we go. All right. So what this has done now is created a brand new folder called enverge within the sales series where I pointed it at, and right from here we have all the information at our fingertips that we picked. So from there, a lot of times what we saw in previous versions of GP, users simply just going and clicking Excel. I want to be able to manipulate this data, maybe sort, filter, whatever it might be, using Microsoft Excel. Well, rather than doing that and pushing that out to Excel, really kind of the new paradigm now is to publish this over to Excel. And what this does is it allows us to actually open up an Excel workbook that's pre-configured and pre-plumbed up to Dynamics GP. So if we drop this down here, and I'm going to close Smart Lists, and what I want to do is I'm going to come over here to my area page, my navigation pane, and I'm going to look for where the name contains the word enverge. And we're going to apply our filter there. So what we see here is the actual report, the one that I just created, because I used the publishing option. Let me double click on that. And we should be able to see this report popping on up. So while we're waiting for this to pop up, let me just hedge my bet here. We'll just go back over here to the traditional client just in case. For some reason, the browser for some reason stopped working or something like that. Where the name contains enverge. And we're going to go ahead and select that and view. There we go. And so what this allows us to do is actually see the information right within Excel. But the difference here is between original spreadsheets that were pumped out from SmartList to Excel, they were static. And what that meant is that if I were to come in and delete these rows, so I deleted all the A's and B's and so on, they're gone from my list unless I refreshed it or something like that. If I come over here to the data side of things and I refresh all, it automatically pulls that in. And what this allows us to do as users of Dynamics GP is actually use these dynamically connected spreadsheets to do really in-depth analysis, and then also have the ability to go ahead and take these spreadsheets offline. So, I'm going to go out to the airport and hop on a plane and fly across the country. I can use all this information while I'm on the plane doing analysis, and when I connect to the internet again, I'm able to refresh that automatically. So GP's capabilities extend far beyond just the browser and the traditional client, but actually enable the ability to do detailed analysis using the Office Productivity Suite, whether that be Excel like we were seeing here, or Microsoft Word, or something like that. So lastly here, let's go ahead and take a look at the financial effect of some of the transactions that we've been processing, etc. And what we're looking at here is a tool called Management Reporter that reports off of the financial activities of a company. I'm going to go ahead and launch a financial statement, and what we're seeing here is just the traditional income statement with a trend that's rolling out across all the periods within the current financial year. And then from within here, we can go ahead and do additional analysis. So if we needed to drill in, say, into the sales activity for March, we can go ahead and choose March, and then from there, drill into additional detail. Now, when I choose that drill option now, I'm actually drilling down into the journal entry line item level, but because Dynamics knows that I'm actually a Dynamics GP user, it's asking, do I want to just drill to that report transaction level, or do I actually want to move to Microsoft Dynamics GP and continue my analysis there? By drilling to the transaction level itself, I'm going to be able to see all the journal entry line items that make up those balances, and then that's kind of the end of the analysis that I can do within Management Reporter Web Viewer. Going to GP, I can actually take a look at one of those entries and then continue to drill back into the subledger activity. The things that we saw just a few minutes ago as I was taking you through the sales process of creating an order, invoicing that order, etc. So GP users will be able to go ahead and continue that analysis. But the cool thing about this is that just like we were talking about as it related to workflow, that users or people that are involved in processes don't need to be users of Dynamics GP. Management Reporter Web Viewer is actually provided with unlimited licenses for your organization. And what that means is every single person in your organization could have access to their associated managerial or other financial reports. Now, you might not want to do that, and you certainly don't have to, but just know that you can put the power of this in everybody's hands. And because it's all web-based, we can actually look at it either on our desktop, on a tablet, or on a mobile device, and be able to have kind of all the capabilities that you've seen here. Now, certainly with a tablet and a mobile device, if you're not connected up to your internal network or through a hosting partner like Purely Cloud, you might need to go ahead and do some additional configuration there. But the other thing is the ability to actually collaborate or interact with people. So if I'm a department manager and I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, you know, my travel expenses look pretty high for that particular period. I don't really understand why it is what it is. I can actually go ahead and ask them a question. So travel looks high for March. We didn't go anywhere. And by posting that comment there, you know, one, we actually get a visual cue that that a comment has been placed, and through some configuration within the web viewer itself, we're able to actually message the appropriate people, the financial planning and analysis people, to let them know that this user has actually posted a comment on this particular cell. So we can use Management Reporter Web Viewer as a collaboration platform between department heads, division managers, actual operating company managers, etc., with the accounting and finance staff, but not necessarily have to go ahead and walk down the hall or send an email or so on. We can do that all through the collaboration capabilities within the web viewer. And just like I was showing you with the Smart List and Excel-based reporting, if for some reason I wanted to take this with me on this trip here, I can go ahead and choose to download and then download that to Microsoft Excel and do some additional what-if analysis within Excel of the financial report itself. And the nice thing about Management Reporter as it relates to formatting of Microsoft Excel documents, things like these totaling formulas of net income, net operating income, etc., all of that can actually be pushed out to Excel with the proper formula, so the equal sum capabilities of Excel, so that as I'm doing that what-if analysis and changing these values from time to time, everything is rolling down and footing properly for us. So with that, we're kind of ending our tour here, and so just to kind of recap of what we've seen. What we've seen is we've seen the purchasing series and how all that works. We went to the sales series and went through most of the major functions there. And then we went down and saw some of the general ledger effect and how we manage financial reporting using Management Reporter and Management Reporter Web Viewer as a way to disseminate that information electronically to all the appropriate people within your organization. So what do we need to do to get Dynamics GP? So there's kind of two different kind of schools out there, or two different groups of people, excuse me. There's people that are, you know, not necessarily running GP today, that are looking to get onto the product, and then there's people that own Dynamics GP and are using it, but might not be using the most current version. So for the people that are currently using Dynamics GP, there's a couple blogs that we have out on our website of what to expect during a GP upgrade. What are the things that you need to do in order to prepare for that upgrade that you can do even before you engage us from a consulting standpoint to help you through that process. And then also another one of, you know, should we wait to upgrade, because Dynamics GP 2016 came out earlier. If you remember the roadmap I showed you, R2 is just around the corner later this year. There's not an official release date that I'm aware of, but if it follows kind of the normal course of events, we should see it in early December. So I would reference those two blogs there of how you can go through that process there. We're really encouraging, and Microsoft is really encouraging all of the existing Dynamics GP customers to upgrade to Dynamics GP 2016. And the reason being is the web client is kind of a fundamental game changer for Microsoft Dynamics GP. If you've been with the product for a while, moving from one version to another, it's not an overly complicated process, but it's certainly, a process that you need to go through in a very prescriptive or meticulous manner. With the introduction of the Dynamics GP web client, and really Dynamics GP 2016's web client, because that's the HTML5 version of it, all future upgrades, whether they be service packs, hot fixes, or major releases, the deployment of that is pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and patch up the web browser servers, the Internet Explorer servers, and immediately the users will be able to access that functionality. There still might be a little bit of system downtime, but really the way that Microsoft is describing these things is even if it's a major release, we go to GP 2017 or 2018, whatever the next major version is, they really look at that as just a service pack application because we're going to just go ahead and patch up the web client and be able to take advantage of those capabilities. As it relates to people that don't run Dynamics GP today, we certainly would like to engage with you in a conversation about what your business requirements are. This fictitious company, more of a distribution company, is one thing, but Dynamics GP actually fits a wide variety of companies. We have companies that are in the entertainment industry out of our Los Angeles office, life science companies, both in San Diego and Los Angeles, major manufacturing companies, etc. So the important thing is to understand the requirements of your business, so the appropriate capabilities of Dynamics GP can be scoped out for you, and then presented to you from a proof of concept or proof of value to make sure that it's a good fit for your organization itself. That's a pretty straightforward process. It's not very hard. Kind of 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes on a phone call, or an in-person meeting. And then if there is a demonstration needed, a couple hours of time to walk through that. And the licensing itself from Microsoft is fairly straightforward. And the licensing options are available where you can purchase the licensing, kind of a one-time perpetual license that you purchase, or it's also offered as software as a service. So if you choose purely cloud from a hosting provider standpoint, you can go ahead and choose to rent the use of that software or software as a service there. There's a few other resources. I've referenced our blogs quite a few times. There's a link to the new features within Dynamics GP 2016. There's a pretty good recap there from Dynamics GP 2013 all the way through present date. As well as the What's New guide. Microsoft is fairly good as new products are released or new versions are released, sending out detailed feature documentation as well as kind of a summary guide of what are the new features that are out there. And then as you're considering an implementation or an upgrade to Dynamics GP 2016, taking a look at those system requirements and making a decision of whether or not you want to go ahead and continue in kind of a traditional model, meaning the infrastructure is on-premise with you, and building out additional capabilities to service the needs of Dynamics GP 2016, or engaging with Chris Wing's team to go ahead and have that solution hosted for you. So with that, I want to thank you all for attending. I don't want to rush you guys off the line. We have 10 minutes left for questions and answers, but there's an upcoming session at 2:30 about collaboration design for the future with SharePoint 2016. And while I only focused on the capabilities of GP as it relates to Power BI and Excel and so on, GP definitely has a lot of connectivity between SharePoint and itself, and so I would encourage you to attend that session. With that, I'm going to see if we have any questions that have come from the audience. If you haven't posed any questions, because I actually kind of forgot to give the housekeeping pieces of as you have questions, you can go ahead and put those into the chat. You can go into the chat section of the browser and go ahead and type those questions on it now. So Bob from Covina is actually asking a question right now, and he's asking, he runs QuickBooks today, and he wants to know the time that it's going to take to implement Dynamics GP. Bob, you're right. That's important because we're getting close to the end of the year, and what we see is that we see a lot of companies that want to start off the beginning of a new calendar year with a new financial system. That way, they can keep all of their history for the year, starting off at that point, and not have to start over or launch in the middle of a year. So the typical process, depending on what you're looking at, and Bob, I really don't know your organization all that well, but if it's just the core financial capabilities that you're looking for, and maybe some of the distribution components that I showed you today, you're probably looking at 2.5 months to get to a point where you have the system into production. And so with the holidays coming up later on this year, the U.S. holidays of Thanksgiving and Christmas, etc., we definitely would recommend that you start your evaluation now. Try to get to a point where you're making a decision of GP being a right solution for you by early to mid-October to give you enough time to get everything in, your users trained and tested, and make sure that you're ready for the beginning of the year. So Tim Cruikshank from Impediment actually asked a question here: do email approvals for AP work in a hosted environment? And they absolutely do. So from a hosting standpoint, there are some setup considerations there, but once those things are done, really it's no different between a hosted environment or an on-premise environment. It ties seamlessly into the email server that sends those things on out. But Tim, we're really happy to go ahead and either have a more technical discussion with you and your team, Steve, and those folks on how that can happen, or actually come on out on site, because I know that from our corporate offices, you guys are about 5 minutes away. So I appreciate the question there. So let me see here. Do we have anybody else? All right, we have Sam from Escondido, and he's actually asking about upgrade paths. He's running Dynamics GP 10 today, and Sam, there's a lot of folks that have made a decision not to upgrade until now. There's for GP 2016, there's kind of two versions that you can upgrade directly from to Dynamics GP, that being GP 2015 and also GP 2013 R2. But don't worry, the process itself, we understand how to do it. We've done it with a number of clients. We've actually taken them from GP 10, move them up to GP 2013, and then from there to 2016. The only thing really involved in that, outside of a normal upgrade process, is because we're affecting the database, we want to make sure that the values that we had, so things like the trial balance in the financial series, that debits and credits and account balances and everything are tying out pre-upgrade to post-upgrade. And because there's multiple steps, meaning we're moving from one version and then from that version to the final version, GP 2016, there's just an extra step of reconciliation to make sure that, if for some reason something happens, and we've never had something happen, I'm not going to guarantee you that it wouldn't, but we haven't seen anything in the past, that you would be able to go ahead and confirm that when we did the first version upgrade to 2013, that everything agreed pre and post conversion, and then do that last step to take you to 2016 and go through once again that same reconciliation process there. So great question, and don't worry, we can definitely take you through that process, and it's not that difficult to go through there. Let me see here. I don't see any other questions that are being sent directly to me, and I'm going to look at my colleagues and see if anything is sent to everybody on there. So with that, I'm going to thank you all for attending. As I mentioned, the recording and all the material will be available online shortly from our marketing folks, and we'll be certainly following up with each and every one of you to make sure that you got value out of this session. Really appreciate the time. Look forward to all of you guys attending the 2:30 session Pacific time here on SharePoint Server 2016. And with that, I'll wish you a good day.